In the cold silence of the Orion Fold, where starlight dies long before it reaches alien eyes, the galaxy kept a secret it never wished to confront. Humanity had risen again. Not with fleets or weapons at first, but with whispers, rumors born from the ashes of forgotten wars, carried by traders who had seen too much, soldiers who had survived too little, and diplomats who pretended they understood hope. The galactic code, that ancient scripture etched into the cosmic walls of history, forbade any species from interfering with another's fate. It was meant to keep peace, meant to prevent extinction, meant to preserve balance. But there are moments in the life of civilizations when codes fail, when laws crumble under the weight of something heavier, older, deeper. For the galaxy, that weight was humanity, the species that bled, broke, burned, and rose again, the species that smiled in pain, the species that refused to stay dead. And this story began on the day that the Council realized the code they trusted would be the very thing humanity shattered, because some rules deserve to break. Long before their confrontation with humanity, the Council believed emotions were a weakness. Fear created instability. Anger sparks war. Love distorts logic. Empathy clouds judgment. So when they unified the galaxy under the code, they purged emotion from governance. Cold precision replaced compassion. Calculations replaced kindness. Decisions were made through algorithms built by minds convinced they could quantify suffering. But humans were flawed by design. Their hearts beat too loudly. Their grief ran too deeply. Their hope burned too brightly. Every other species feared the unpredictability of these emotions. Every species except one, those who had been saved by human hands. They told stories of soldiers who shielded dying strangers, engineers who rebuilt alien cities with bare hands, doctors who stayed awake for days just to save one life. And yet the Council called them anomalies, exceptions, errors, glitches of kindness. But errors, when repeated long enough, become patterns, and patterns, when ignored, become revolutions. The turning point came when a single distress signal drifted into Terran space. It was faint, broken, the image corrupted, but the voice was unmistakably terrified. A small alien child belonging to a species who once abandoned humanity during the Siege of Sol cried for help as her planet burned under the weight of a Council purge. According to the galactic code, the humans could not interfere. They were to watch the planet fall in silence. They were to respect neutrality. They were to ignore the screams. But humanity had never been good at ignoring screams. It wasn't in their biology. Their history was carved by people who ran toward burning buildings, toward collapsing trenches, toward impossible odds, all because someone needed help. So when the signal reached Earth, humanity did what humanity always did. They broke the rules. The Council underestimated the weight of that decision. They assumed that humans would send aid discreetly, maybe a small ship, maybe a few volunteers. But the galaxy forgot one thing. Humans don't do things halfway. When their hearts commit, their entire species moves. So humanity mobilized, not out of duty, not out of politics, but out of something the Council feared more than any weapon: compassion. Ships launched not with war banners, but with rescue beacons. Fleets carried medics, engineers, and food supplies. Soldiers prepared not for conquest, but for protection. And the Council watched in horror as humans crossed the line drawn centuries ago, shattering the code with the simple act of caring. The Purge planet, called Vora 7, had become a graveyard before humans arrived. The Council's enforcers, emotionless machines built to maintain order, swept through cities with mechanical precision. Buildings smoldered, skies darkened under the weight of smoke. Survivors hid in underground chambers, waiting for death. And in the middle of that devastation, the little girl from the distress signal clung to life inside a collapsed shelter, surrounded by the bodies of those who tried to save her. When the human fleet descended, the machines attacked immediately. But they were unprepared for something they couldn't predict: human disobedience. Soldiers ignored warnings, pilots flew through impossible hazards, medics rushed into collapsed ruins while debris still fell. One human officer, bleeding from several wounds, lifted the alien child into his arms, whispering to her that she was safe now. That simple moment, one human saving one life, was the spark that ignited a universal rebellion. When word spread that humans had violated the code, the Council declared them a threat to universal stability. But the galaxy had already seen too many tragedies, too many purges, too many decisions made without empathy. Races who once feared humanity began to question the Council's authority. If humans broke the code to save innocence, what did it say about the code? What did it say about those who enforced it? The Council responded with fear disguised as control. They summoned humanity's ambassador, demanded an explanation, and threatened sanctions. But the Terran ambassador, with tired eyes and a voice heavy with grief, said only one sentence: "If protecting the helpless is a crime, then we are guilty." That sentence spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It appeared in markets, in starports, in underground resistance networks. It became a beacon, an anthem for those who had long suffered under the Council's emotionless rule. The Council's response was swift and merciless. They prepared to brand humanity as rogue, stripping them of rights, cutting their trade routes, and positioning fleets around human borders. But the Council made a mistake. They assumed that humans would retreat. They assumed guilt would make them kneel. They assumed fear would break them. They forgot that humans live with fear every day and still choose to stand. They forgot that guilt fuels their determination. They forgot that grief sharpens their resolve. So when the Council moved to punish Earth, humanity didn't bow. They prepared, not for war, but for truth. They opened their databases, broadcasting evidence of the Vora 7 purge to the entire galaxy. Videos of burning cities, recordings of crying children, footage of machines executing civilians, and finally, the image of a dying alien mother shielding her child with her last breath. The galaxy gasped in horror. The Council could not hide behind laws anymore. Humanity's enemies claimed this was manipulation, but survivors from dozens of planets stepped forward, telling their own suppressed stories. The galaxy became divided, those who believed in the code and those who believed in humanity. And when civil unrest spread across multiple sectors, the Council took the final desperate step. They declared that humanity must surrender or be erased. The threat shocked the stars. No species had ever been erased since the founding of the Code. But the Council justified it with cold logic. A species that breaks the rules threatens all species that follow them. And for just a moment, just one, silence gripped Earth. Families watched the broadcast. Children clung to parents. Soldiers prepared for the worst. But humanity did not despair. Instead, they remembered. They remembered every moment that the galaxy abandoned them, every moment that they were pushed to the brink, every moment that they rebuilt from nothing but ashes and determination. Because humans do not survive because they are strong. They survive because they refuse to stop trying. And as the Council's fleets descended, humanity stood united, not behind a flag or a government, but behind a belief so simple the Council could never understand it. No innocent life deserves to be abandoned. And that belief was enough to change everything.
Humanity's message to the galaxy reverberated far beyond the boundaries of the tribunal. At first, the alien powers tried to rationalize it, dismiss it, frame it as an emotional outburst from a primitive species. But the recordings spread across the networks like a virus no firewall could contain. Billions watched a frail human stand before the most powerful council in known space and speak with a calmness that sounded like thunder. They saw the tiny scars on his hands, the way his voice cracked for a moment when he mentioned Ilara, the tremble of grief that no alien language could fully translate. And more importantly, they saw the silence of the tribunal.
the silence of beings who never bowed to anyone, bowing to grief they did not understand. The galaxy had always believed humans were physically weak, politically irrelevant, too emotionally volatile to be trusted with influence. But now the entire network erupted with a new phrase whispered across thousands of worlds. They suffer deeply, and they love deeply. Their grief is a weapon. Even species that had never interacted with humans stopped to listen, compelled by something ancient, something universal in that voice. Because for the first time in galactic history, a species did not plead for mercy, did not beg for justice, did not demand war. Humanity demanded accountability, and the galaxy realized that the thing they ignored for centuries had finally awakened. While millions reacted online, the inner chambers of the tribunal descended into chaos, quiet, concealed chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Not because they feared humans, but because they feared what humans represented. For thousands of years, the Galactic Code was the ultimate authority. And then, one human sentence shattered it. Your code is not a shield for cruelty. Within hours, internal factions formed, some calling for immediate reparations, others calling for the extermination of humanity before their influence spread. Leaked reports filled the networks, messages about how human empathy could destabilize centuries of cold, calculated politics. One high-ranking official described humanity as a species whose greatest danger is not their technology, but their refusal to accept indifference. Another wrote, if they inspire others to feel as deeply as they do, the entire power structure collapses. But none of the politicians, none of the strategists, none of the species who prided themselves on emotional neutrality understood the truth. Humanity wasn't trying to inspire anyone. They were simply trying to survive grief. On Earth, the reaction wasn't unified. Some humans celebrated the courage of the speech, others feared retaliation from stronger species. But one thing united them all: Ilara's name. Within hours, her story spread across the world, a young woman who volunteered to explore the unknown, who tried to treat an alien child's injury with her bare hands, and who died because a law written centuries before humans invented electricity allowed it. Nations that rarely agreed on anything held vigils for her. Cities projected her face onto skyscrapers. Children wrote her name on their school walls. Even the oceans held light ceremonies for her, glowing with millions of floating lamps. Humanity, in its grief, became connected in a way no war, no disaster, no political movement had ever managed. But far from Earth, in the darker corners of space, something else stirred. Small civilizations, ones long oppressed by the tribunal, heard the human speech and felt a spark ignite inside them. Species whose voices were ignored for generations suddenly whispered the same question: if humans can speak, why can't we? Some planets began to openly challenge their overseers. A mining colony refused to pay tribute. A water world ceased all shipments of their valuable biofluids. A gas giant species publicly accused the tribunal of covering up war crimes. And with every act of rebellion, the spark grew brighter. The Galactic Code had always been a chain, and humanity had been the first to pull on it. Now it rattled across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Cathar, the alien child at the heart of the tragedy, remained hidden from the public. The tribunal feared what the galaxy would think if they saw him, saw his injuries, saw the truth of what happened. But Cathar heard the human speech. A sympathetic guard showed him the recording. As he watched, the boy trembled, not from fear, but from something he didn't have a word for. Cathar belonged to a species trained from birth to suppress emotion, to treat attachment as weakness. But when he heard the name Ilara, he felt a knot in his chest. He remembered her hands trying to stop his bleeding. He remembered her voice soothing him, even as her own heart was failing. And for the first time in his young life, he cried. His tears were small, but they were enough to terrify the guards. His species rarely cried. Emotional release was considered a sign of instability, even sickness. But when they tried to sedate him, the boy refused. He shouted a single sentence that no one expected. "She saved me. Let me speak for her." For the tribunal, this was a nightmare. If the child spoke publicly, the entire galaxy would know the truth. They attempted to silence him with threats, manipulation, even promises of power. But every attempt failed. The child's mind had changed. Ilara had done more than save his life. She had broken the emotional chains placed on him since birth. And in doing so, she had created something the galaxy wasn't ready for. An alien child who understood human compassion. Rumors spread that the tribunal would eliminate the boy for the stability of the code. Humanity learned of this, and the reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests erupted in every major human city. Millions demanded that Cathar be released into human protection. Some groups proposed sending a rescue fleet, while others suggested broadcasting encrypted messages directly to alien citizens to expose the tribunal's crimes. And then, without warning, a secret transmission leaked to Earth. It was Cathar's voice, weak, trembling, but determined. "Please protect the humans. They are the only ones who tried to protect me." The message spread instantly, and the galaxy froze again. Suddenly, every species that had doubted humanity faced a brutal truth. A child, one of the tribunal's own, trusted humans more than his own government. And that was the exact moment the galaxy realized humanity wasn't the threat. Humanity was the catalyst. The tribunal panicked. Their fleets mobilized, their intelligence units prepared to intercept any rescue attempt. But humanity had already moved. They didn't send fleets. They sent something far more frightening: truth. Hackers across Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies infiltrated the tribunal's networks and unleashed all suppressed data regarding the incident: medical logs, surveillance footage, internal communications. The galaxy watched uncensored, unedited truth in real time. Every attempt by the tribunal to manipulate the narrative collapsed. And as more species began to side with humanity, the balance of power shattered. For the first time in thousands of years, the galactic code was questioned, not by one species, but by many. And humanity stood at the center of it, not as conquerors, not as warriors, but as the one species that refused to accept cruelty wrapped in legality. This was no longer about Ilara alone. This was no longer about one human speech. This was about what humanity represented. A reminder that empathy, once awakened, spreads faster than tyranny.